She thought she'd spend Thanksgiving alone until a billionaire knocked on her door and reminded her what it felt like to be wanted again. Beckstrom was reaching for the saddest single-serving turkey breast in South Carolina when someone knocked on her door so urgently her heart stalled, and the man she found through the peephole looked just as broken as she felt. Thelma Beckstrom's apartment smelled like burnt cinnamon and exhaustion. The scented candle she'd lit 3 days ago sat on her counter, wax pooling unevenly, filling the air with a sweetness that felt like a lie. She'd bought it with the kind of hope that embarrassed her now, as if good smells could mask loneliness, as if ambiance mattered when you were 36 years old and spending Thanksgiving alone in a third-floor apartment nobody visited. Family, welcome back to Mr. Sterling's Secrets of Love, where we bring you emotional stories of love, loss, and unexpected second chances. Because love doesn't schedule itself, it arrives when it chooses. If you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. If you're a returning viewer, thank you. We appreciate you deeply. Now stay with us. You won't want to miss how Beckstrom's life shifts the moment someone knocks on her door. Leave a comment with your thoughts and like this video. Let's continue. Her phone buzzed. Mom's name lit up the screen. Beckstrom let it ring once, twice, 3 times before answering, long enough to force the tightness out of her throat. "Hey, Ma. Baby, you sure you don't want me to send Patricia over?" Her mother's voice carried that careful texture of illness, trying to sound strong. Eleanor Beckstrom had been fighting Parkinson's for 2 years now, each tremor stealing a little more of the woman who'd taught Beckstrom to stand tall no matter what. "She's making too much food anyway." "I'm good, Ma. Really." Beckstrom turned away from the turkey breast still sitting limp in plastic wrap. "You need to rest, not coordinate my social life." "I'm not coordinating. I'm worrying. That's different." "Ma!" "And you're not fine. Don't lie to your mama." Beckstrom sank onto her threadbare couch, the one she'd bought from a thrift store when she'd moved into this Charleston apartment 4 years ago, back when she'd still been married and struggling instead of divorced and drowning. "Progress, right?" "I'm just tired," Beckstrom said, which wasn't entirely a lie. She was tired. Tired of medical bills for her mother's care, even though Eleanor lived 3 hours away in Colombia. Tired of the divorce settlement that left her with nothing but relief. Tired of being 36 and feeling like all her chances at happiness had expired before she'd even opened them. "You've been tired for 4 years, Thelma." "I know. Since that man walked out." "Ma, please. I don't want to talk about Marcus on Thanksgiving." Her mother went quiet for a moment. Then, "You deserve to be happy, baby. You know that, right?" Did she? Some days Beckstrom wasn't sure what she deserved. Maybe this apartment with walls thin enough to hear her neighbors hosting the holiday she wished she had. This view of a parking lot where her beat-up Toyota sat looking as defeated as she felt. This life where she worked, came home, sent money to her mother, and fell asleep trying not to think about the fact that her father would never see her truly happy because he'd died 5 years ago and she'd wasted her 20s on the wrong man anyway. "Turkey's about to burn, Ma. You haven't even started cooking. Love you." She hung up before her mother could call her out on more lies. And that's when the knock came. This structure mirrors the competitor's emotional pacing while keeping your unique story and voice intact. The hook draws readers in immediately. The CTA feels natural, and the backstory weaves seamlessly into the opening dialogue with Beckstrom's mother. And that's when the knock came. Sharp, urgent. The kind of knock that made Beckstrom's pulse spike before her brain could catch up. Nobody knocked like that unless something was wrong. Fire? Medical emergency? Someone at the wrong door in a panic? She froze on the couch, phone still warm in her hand from lying to her mother. The knock came again. "Just a second," she called, voice shakier than she wanted. She crossed to the door in 3 steps, bare feet silent on the worn carpet, and checked the peephole. A man stood in the hallway. Tall, dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it all day. Wearing a slate gray coat that somehow looked expensive even through the distorted lens. Wool, not polyester, the kind that held its shape. His shoulders were tense, jaw tight, and his eyes looked like winter trying to thaw. Lost, tired, alone. Beckstrom's heart did something strange in her chest. Not fear. Recognition. "Can I help you?" She called through the door, hand hovering near the deadbolt, but not touching it yet. The man cleared his throat. "I'm so sorry. I think I'm looking for 4B. This is 3B. He laughed, but it sounded wrong, tight, broken. "I'm clearly lost." 4B is upstairs," Beckstrom said, still not opening the door. "1 floor up." "Right, of course." He didn't move. "I should have... Sorry. I'll get out of your way." She should have let him go. Should have watched through the peephole until he disappeared up the stairs and become someone else's Thanksgiving story. But something in his voice stopped her. That same exhaustion she'd just lied to her mother about. The sound of someone who was supposed to be somewhere but couldn't make themselves go through with it. Against every reasonable instinct, Beckstrom unlocked the door and opened it halfway. The man looked startled, as if he hadn't expected her to show her face. Up close, he was younger than she'd thought. Maybe 40, maybe less, with the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from stress, not age. His coat was definitely expensive. So was his watch. Even his posture screamed money in a way Beckstrom had learned to recognize after 4 years of working at the kind of hotel where Charleston's wealthy parked their mistresses and second families. "You okay?" she asked. The question seemed to catch him off guard. He stopped, started again. "I was supposed to go to 4B. My executive assistant lives there. Carmen. She invited me to Thanksgiving with her family." "That's nice of her." "It is." He looked down at his shoes. "But I couldn't do it. Got all the way up here. Stood outside her door for 5 minutes. And just couldn't knock." He met her eyes again, and Beckstrom saw something raw there. Something that made her want to close the door, and something that made her want to keep it open. Didn't want to ruin her family's holiday with whatever this is. He gestured vaguely at himself, as if his entire emotional state was visible like a stain. "What is it?" Beckstrom asked, surprising herself. "Grief, I think. Maybe just..." He trailed off, shook his head. "I'm sorry. You don't need a stranger unloading at your door on Thanksgiving." "My Thanksgiving was pretty much over before it started," Beckstrom said. The words came out before she could stop them. "So you're not interrupting much." The man studied her for a moment. Not in the way men usually looked at her, assessing, calculating, wanting. This was different. This was someone checking to see if she meant it. "I'm Tony," he said finally. "Tony Borunda. Thelma Beckstrom. Beckstrom, usually." Beckstrom. He tested the name like he was trying to figure out if it fit her. "That's a good name." "It was my father's." "Was?" "Cancer. 5 years ago." Tony's expression shifted into something Beckstrom recognized immediately. The look of someone who knew that particular flavor of loss. "My mother," he said quietly. "Last Thanksgiving." He laughed again, that broken sound. "Turns out holidays don't get easier. They get worse," Beckstrom finished, "because everyone expects you to be over it." Exactly. They stood there in her doorway, two strangers connected by the thinnest thread of shared grief. and Beckstrom made a decision that was either incredibly kind or incredibly stupid. "You want to come in?" she asked. "I've got a depressing turkey breast and absolutely no plan for what to do with it." Tony blinked. "I couldn't." "You already couldn't go upstairs," Beckstrom pointed out. "And I already couldn't lie to my mother convincingly enough. So we're both having the kind of Thanksgiving where the bar is pretty low." A smile flickered across Tony's face. Real, this time. Small, but real. "You sure?" "No," Beckstrom said honestly. "But I'm doing it anyway." She stepped back and opened the door wider. Tony hesitated for exactly 3 seconds, then stepped inside. Beckstrom's apartment looked worse with someone in it. The burnt cinnamon smell seemed stronger, the threadbare furniture more obvious. The view of the parking lot through the window more depressing. She watched Tony take it all in, and felt the familiar shame rising in her throat. The shame of being broke, of being alone, of being exactly the kind of woman who spent holidays in apartments like this. But Tony didn't look judgmental. He looked relieved. "This is nice," he said, and somehow didn't sound like he was lying. "It's small." "Small's good. Big houses just echo." Beckstrom studied him. "How big is your house?" "Too big." Tony slipped out of his coat and looked around for somewhere to put it. Beckstrom took it and hung it on the hook by the door. The fabric was heavier than she expected, lined with something soft. "I built it 6 years ago thinking I'd fill it with, I don't know, life, people, something. Instead, it's just me and too much square footage." "You live alone?" "Yeah." He said it like a confession. "Me too." "By choice?" Beckstrom considered lying, then decided she was done with that for the day. "Divorce 4 years ago. You?" "Never married." Tony looked uncomfortable admitting it. "Kept thinking I'd find the right person, the right time. Kept working instead. And then my mother got sick and I realized I'd been working my whole life and had nobody to show for it, except employees and business partners who'd forget me the moment I stopped signing their checks." The honesty was startling. Beckstrom had spent enough time around wealthy people to know they usually didn't talk like this. They bragged or complained or performed, but they didn't just tell the truth. "What do you do?" she asked. "For work? Real estate development. Commercial buildings mostly. Some residential." He said it dismissively, like it didn't matter. "I build things. Big things, impressive things that bore me as soon as they're finished." "That sounds lonely." "It is." Tony met her eyes. "You understand that?" It wasn't a question. "Yeah," Beckstrom said. "I do." The turkey breast was still wrapped in plastic. Beckstrom stared at it like it might have instructions written on the packaging. Tony appeared next to her, hands in his pockets. "I should probably admit something," he said. "What?" "I have no idea how to cook a turkey." Beckstrom laughed. Actually laughed, and the sound startled both of them. "Seriously?" she asked. "Seriously. I can build a skyscraper. I can negotiate billion-dollar contracts. I cannot cook a turkey to save my life." He looked sheepish. "Or anything else, really. I eat out. Or Carmen orders in. Or I forget to eat." "That's the saddest thing I've heard today." "It's Thanksgiving. The bar's high." Beckstrom laughed again, and this time it felt easier. When was the last time she'd laughed? Really laughed, not the fake performance kind she did at work? "Okay," she said, unwrapping the turkey breast with more confidence than she felt. "I don't know what I'm doing either. But between us, we'll figure it out." "That's optimistic." "I know. Don't get used to it." They worked in Beckstrom's tiny kitchen, which barely fit one person comfortably and definitely didn't fit two. Tony kept apologizing every time he bumped into her. Beckstrom kept telling him to stop apologizing. They seasoned the turkey with whatever spices she had, too much garlic probably, and some dried herbs she couldn't identify, and shoved it in the oven. "How long?" Tony asked. "No idea. Until it looks done." "Very scientific. You're the one who admitted you can't cook." "Fair point." They moved to the couch while the turkey did whatever turkey was supposed to do in an oven. Beckstrom offered him water because she didn't have anything else. Tony accepted it like she'd handed him champagne. "Can I ask you something?" Tony said after a moment. "Sure. Why'd you let me in?" Beckstrom considered the question. "You looked how I feel," she said finally. "And I didn't want either of us to feel it alone." Tony stared at her like she'd just said something profound instead of obvious. "Nobody's said anything like that to me in years," he said quietly. "Said what?" "Anything real." He set his water down on the coffee table, an old trunk Beckstrom had salvaged from a curb. "Most people talk to me because they want something. Money, connections, opportunities. They perform. They say what they think I want to hear." He looked at her. "You just told me the truth." "I'm too tired to do anything else," Beckstrom admitted. "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Tony asked, "What happened with your divorce?" "You don't have to. I want to know. If you want to tell me." Beckstrom took a breath. "His name was Marcus. We met when I was 28. Got married a year later because that's what you do, right? When someone asks and you're almost 30 and everyone's asking when you're going to settle down." She picked at a loose thread on the couch. "Turned out Marcus loved the idea of me more than the actual me. The moment things got hard, my dad got sick, money got tight, he checked out. Emotionally first, then physically." "That's shitty?" Beckstrom supplied. "Yeah, it was. Still is, actually. The shitty part doesn't go away just because time passes." "No," Tony agreed. "It doesn't." "What about your mom?" Beckstrom asked. "What happened?" Tony's jaw tightened. "Stroke. Sudden. She was here one day, gone 3 days later. I'd been meaning to visit for months. Kept putting it off because of work, because of deals, because I was building some tower in Atlanta that seemed urgent at the time." His voice went flat. "Turns out nothing's urgent except the stuff you can't get back." "I'm sorry." "Me too." He looked at her. "But somehow sitting here, in your apartment, with that burnt cinnamon smell and a turkey breast that might poison us both, somehow this is the first Thanksgiving I haven't wanted to disappear through." Beckstrom felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen for a very long time. "Tony?" "Yeah? I'm glad you knocked on the wrong door." He smiled, real and full and human. "Me too, Beckstrom. Me too." The turkey came out slightly charred and definitely dry. They ate it anyway, sitting on her couch because her table was covered in bills she'd been avoiding. Tony didn't mention them, didn't offer to help, didn't make her feel small. He just ate burnt turkey and told her about his mother, about the buildings he'd made, about the loneliness that came with success nobody warned you about. And Beckstrom told him about her mother's Parkinson's, about the medical bills, about how tired she was of pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. They talked until the apartment grew dark, and neither of them moved to turn on the lights. And when Tony finally stood to leave, he hesitated at the door. "Would it be weird," he asked carefully, "if I said I wanted to see you again? Not because of obligation, not because I feel sorry for you or you feel sorry for me, but because sitting here felt right. Normal. The first normal thing I've felt in over a year." Beckstrom's heart stuttered. She'd sworn off men, sworn off hope, sworn off letting anyone close enough to hurt her again, but something in Tony's eyes, The vulnerability, the honesty, the fear that she might say no, made her brave. "Yeah," she whispered. "I'd like that." Tony's shoulders relaxed. "Really? Really? Can I get your number?" Beckstrom recited it. Tony entered it into his phone with the careful attention of someone who didn't want to mess this up. "I'll text you," he said. "Tomorrow, if that's okay." "It's okay." He smiled, opened the door, then turned back. "Beckstrom? Yeah? Thank you. For opening the door. For letting me in. For making this the first Thanksgiving in a year that didn't feel like drowning." "You did the same for me," she said. Tony nodded once and then disappeared into the hallway. Beckstrom closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. She didn't know what this was. Didn't know where it would go, Mom. But for the first time in 4 years, she felt something other than tired. She felt wanted. Tony's text came at 10:47 the next morning. Beckstrom was still in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince herself that last night had actually happened, that a stranger had knocked on her door, that she'd let him in, that they'd shared burnt turkey and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Unknown number. This is Tony. From last night. Just wanted to make sure you know I'm real and not some Thanksgiving fever dream you had." Beckstrom smiled before she could stop herself. Beckstrom. "Pretty sure fever dreams don't burn turkey that badly." Tony. "Fair point. How are you feeling?" Beckstrom. "Honestly? Confused. You?" Tony. "Same. Good confused or bad confused?" Beckstrom. "Still deciding." Tony. "Can I help you decide? Maybe over coffee? Or lunch? Or literally anything that gets me out of this empty house?" Beckstrom hesitated, thumb hovering over the keyboard. This was happening fast. Too fast. She'd sworn off men, sworn off letting anyone close, sworn off. Tony. "No pressure. If it's too soon or too weird, I understand." And that's what made her say yes. The understanding. The space he gave her to breathe. Beckstrom. "Come over around 2. I'll make coffee. Fair warning. It'll probably be as bad as the turkey." Tony. "Perfect." Beckstrom spent 3 hours cleaning her apartment. Not because it was dirty, exactly, but because she needed to do something with the nervous energy crackling under her skin. She vacuumed, scrubbed the kitchen counter, threw out the burnt cinnamon candle, opened windows to let in air home that didn't smell like regret and failed holidays. At 1:47, she changed her shirt for the 3rd time. At 1:53, she considered canceling. At 2:02, Tony knocked. Beckstrom opened the door, and there he was, still tall, still wearing expensive clothes, but somehow looking more human in daylight. He wore dark jeans and a navy sweater that made his eyes look less like winter and more like early spring. He held a bakery box in one hand. "I brought pie," he said. "Figured if we're going to keep having terrible meals together, we should at least have good dessert." "You didn't have to do that." "I know. I wanted to." He stepped inside when she moved back. "Besides, I Googled what to bring when visiting someone the day after you crashed their Thanksgiving, and the internet had surprisingly few answers." Beckstrom laughed. "That's a very specific search. I'm a very specific kind of disaster." She made coffee, which was, as promised, terrible, and they sat on her couch the same way they had last night. Except this time there was daylight streaming through the windows and nowhere to hide. "I almost texted you at midnight," Tony admitted. "Had the message typed out and everything." "What did it say?" "Thank you for not thinking I was a serial killer." He smiled. "Felt too desperate, so I deleted it." "I did think you might be a serial killer," Beckstrom said. "For about 30 seconds. And then? Then I saw your face and knew you were just sad. Like me. She took a sip of bad coffee. Serial killers probably have better emotional regulation. Tony laughed, a real laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. That's the darkest reasoning I've heard for trusting someone. I work in hospitality. You learn to read people fast. What did you read about me? Beckstrom considered him. Lonely, tired, carrying something heavy you don't know how to put down. She paused. Was I right? Devastatingly. Tony set his coffee down. Can I ask you something? Sure. Last night you mentioned your mother's medical bills. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but how bad is it? The question should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like someone finally asking about the weight she'd been carrying silently for 2 years. Bad, Beckstrom said quietly. Parkinson's is expensive. The medications, the physical therapy, the specialist visits. Her insurance covers some of it, but not enough. I send her what I can every month, but it's never enough. I'm always behind, always scrambling. She looked at her hands. Sometimes I wonder if I'm helping her or just delaying the inevitable. You're helping her, Tony said firmly. Trust me. The fact that you're trying matters more than you know. How do you know? Because I didn't. His voice went tight. My mother got sick and I threw money at it. Paid for the best doctors, the best care, the best everything. But I didn't visit. Didn't call as much as I should have. Worked through her last months because that's what I always did. Worked. He looked away. She died surrounded by nurses I'd hired instead of family I couldn't be bothered to be. Tony, I built her a beautiful memorial. Huge funeral. Gave a speech about how much she meant to me. He laughed bitterly. Everyone said it was touching. All I could think was that she died alone and I didn't even notice until it was too late. Beckstrom reached out without thinking and took his hand. His fingers tightened around hers immediately, like he'd been waiting for someone to anchor him. You're not a bad person, she said. How do you know? Because bad people don't hate themselves for their mistakes. They just make excuses. She squeezed his hand. You're here. You're honest. You knocked on a stranger's door because you couldn't face pretending anymore. That's not a bad person. That's just a person. Tony looked at her like she'd just given him something precious. How are you real? He whispered. I'm not special. I'm just too tired to lie. That's exactly what makes you special. They sat in silence for a moment, hands still linked, and Beckstrom realized she hadn't held anyone's hand in 4 years. Not since her father's funeral, when her mother had gripped hers so tight, Beckstrom thought her bones might break. Can I tell you something? Beckstrom asked. Anything. I'm terrified right now. Of me? Of this. Whatever this is. She gestured vaguely between them. I don't know what we're doing. You're a billionaire. I'm a broke hotel worker drowning in debt. You live in a world I don't understand. And I live in an apartment with walls so thin I can hear my neighbors breathe. This doesn't make sense. I know. But I don't want you to leave. I know that too. Tony shifted closer. For what it's worth, I'm terrified too. I haven't felt anything in over a year. Not real feelings, just numbness. Work, obligations, going through motions. He met her eyes. And then you opened your door and I felt something, and it scared the hell out of me. What did you feel? Seen. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You looked at me and saw a person. Not Tony Borunda, the developer. Not the guy who signs checks and builds buildings. Just Tony. Some sad man who got lost in a hallway. He paused. Nobody's seen me like that in longer than I can remember. I'm not special, Beckstrom repeated. You are to me. The words hung between them, too heavy and too honest to take back. I don't know what I'm doing, Beckstrom admitted. I'm bad at this. Relationships, trusting people, letting anyone close. Me too. So we're both disasters? Seems like it. Tony smiled. But maybe that's okay. Maybe disasters recognize each other. Is that what we're doing? Recognizing each other? Yeah, he said softly. I think that's exactly what we're doing. They opened the pie at 4 o'clock. Chocolate cream with a perfect meringue top, from some bakery Beckstrom couldn't afford if she saved for 6 months. They ate it straight from the box with forks, sitting on her couch while an old movie played on her TV. Something black and white neither of them was watching. Tell me something, Tony said between bites. Something you haven't told anyone else. That's dangerous. I know. Tell me anyway. Beckstrom thought about lying, about deflecting, about keeping herself safe the way she'd learned to do. Instead, she told the truth. I'm afraid I'm turning into my father, she said quietly. He was kind, generous, gave everything to everyone, and never kept anything for himself. She stared at the TV without seeing it. He died broke and exhausted, and everyone at his funeral talked about how wonderful he was. And all I could think was that being wonderful killed him. You think being kind is dangerous. I think being kind without boundaries is suicide. She set her fork down. I give my mother money I don't have. I work extra shifts for coworkers who don't appreciate it. I opened my door to a stranger on Thanksgiving because he looked sad. She looked at Tony. I'm doing exactly what my father did, giving until there's nothing left. But you're still here, Tony pointed out gently. Barely. That's more than barely. He set his own fork down. You want to know something I haven't told anyone? Yes. I'm afraid I'm turning into my father too, Tony said. He built an empire, made millions, worked himself into an early grave at 56. He looked at his hands. I'm 41. I've been working toward the same ending my whole life, building bigger, earning more, pushing harder. For what? So I can die alone in an empty house like he did? Your mother, my mother spent 30 years married to a ghost, a man who was physically present maybe 30% of the time and emotionally present even less. Tony's voice went flat. She loved him anyway, stayed anyway. And when he died, she told me not to make the same mistakes, to find someone, to build a life, not just buildings. He laughed without humor. Instead, I built more buildings. Became him exactly. Beckstrom reached for his hand again. This time it felt natural, easy, like something they'd been doing for years instead of hours. We're quite a pair, she said, terrified of becoming our parents while simultaneously becoming them anyway? Something like that. They sat in silence, watching the movie neither of them cared about, eating pie that was too sweet and too expensive, and somehow exactly what both of them needed. Can I tell you what I think? Tony asked after a while. Please. I think we're more alike than either of us wants to admit. He turned to look at her. I think we're both exhausted from carrying things alone, both scared of ending up like our parents, both pretending we're fine when we're clearly not. That's depressingly accurate. But here's the thing. He squeezed her hand. For the first time in over a year, I don't feel alone. I feel understood. Like someone finally speaks my language. Me too, Beckstrom whispered. So maybe we're disasters, Tony said. But maybe we're disasters who found each other. And maybe that's enough. Is it? I don't know. But I want to find out. Beckstrom looked at him. Really looked at him. at the vulnerability in his eyes, at the hope he was trying not to show too much, at the fear that she might reject him and the courage it took to risk it anyway. "I want that too," she said. Tony's expression shifted into something Beckstrom couldn't quite name. Relief, joy, terror, all of it at once. "Can I keep seeing you?" he asked. "Not just once more, but regularly, intentionally. Like we're building towards something instead of just stumbling through disaster together." "Yes, yes, yes." Beckstrom smiled. "I don't know what this is or where it's going, but I know I want to see you again, and again after that. Even though I'm a mess? Especially because you're a mess." She leaned closer. "You're the first person in 4 years who hasn't needed me to be okay. You just let me be what I am." "Same," Tony said. "You don't want anything from me except honesty. That's—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Do you know how rare that is?" "For me too." They finished the pie, watched the movie, talked about nothing important and everything that mattered. And when Tony finally stood to leave, hours later, when the sun had set and Beckstrom's apartment had grown dark, he hesitated at the door, just like last time. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For opening the door. Both times." He smiled. "For seeing me. For letting me see you. Thank you for knocking." Tony reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so gentle Beckstrom's breath caught. "I'm going to text you tomorrow," he said, "and the day after that, and probably every day until you tell me to stop." "Don't stop," Beckstrom whispered. "Okay." He left, and Beckstrom stood in her doorway, heart pounding, terrified and hopeful and alive in a way she hadn't been in years. She didn't know what came next, but for the first time since her divorce, she wanted to find out. 3 days passed before Tony suggested an actual date. Not just coffee at her apartment. Not just texting at midnight when neither of them could sleep. A real date. In public. Where people could see them together and draw conclusions Beckstrom wasn't ready for. "Tony, there's a coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. No pressure. Just us. Tomorrow at 11? Beckstrom stared at the message for 15 minutes before responding. Beckstrom. "Okay." Tony. "That didn't sound convincing." Beckstrom. "I'm nervous." Tony. "Me too. Let's be nervous together." And that's how Beckstrom found herself standing in front of her closet at 10:15 the next morning, hating every piece of clothing she owned. Too casual. Too formal. Too old. Too young. Too trying too hard. Too not trying hard enough. She settled on jeans and a burgundy sweater that didn't have any visible stains, then changed her mind twice before forcing herself to leave the apartment before she could spiral further. The coffee shop was in downtown Charleston, tucked between a bookstore and a boutique Beckstrom had never been able to afford to enter. She arrived at 10:58, heart hammering, palms sweating despite the November chill. Tony was already there. He stood outside the coffee shop, hands in his pockets, looking just as nervous as she felt. He wore dark jeans and a charcoal Henley that somehow made him look both wealthy and approachable, a combination Beckstrom still couldn't reconcile. When he saw her, his entire face changed. Not just a smile, something deeper. Relief. Joy. Like she was the one person he'd been hoping to see and had been afraid wouldn't show up. "Hi," he said when she reached him. "Hi. You came. You sound surprised. I was afraid you'd change your mind." Tony smiled sheepishly. "Spent the last hour convinced I'd somehow dreamed the last few days and you were going to text saying you'd made a mistake." "I almost did," Beckstrom admitted. "About 6 times. What stopped you?" I wanted to see you more than I wanted to stay scared." Tony's expression softened into something that made Beckstrom's chest ache. "That's the bravest thing anyone's said to me in years," he said quietly. "It's just coffee." "It's not just coffee." He held the door open for her. "But we can pretend it is, if that makes it easier." The coffee shop was perfect in the way only Charleston coffee shops could be. Exposed brick, mismatched furniture, the smell of espresso and cinnamon rolls, local art on the walls priced for tourists who thought $400 for a watercolor of Rainbow Row was reasonable. Tony ordered for both of them after Beckstrom froze looking at the menu, paralyzed by choices and the awareness that everything cost more than she usually spent on coffee in a week. "Latte okay?" he asked gently. "Perfect." They found a table in the corner, away from the window, but close enough to watch people pass by on the street outside. Beckstrom wrapped her hands around her cup, needing something to do with them. "You look beautiful," Tony said. Beckstrom's face heated. "I look like I just came from folding laundry." "You look like you." He took a sip of his coffee. "That's what I meant." "I don't know how to do this," Beckstrom blurted. "Dating, first dates, whatever this is. I'm bad at it." "What makes you think that?" "I was married for 3 years and managed to mess that up completely." "Doesn't exactly inspire confidence in my relationship skills." "Or maybe you were married to the wrong person," Tony suggested. "That's not a failure. That's just life teaching you what you don't want." "What if I mess this up too?" "Then we'll both have messed it up," Tony said simply. "Because I guarantee I'm worse at this than you are. I'm 41 years old, and I've never had a relationship last longer than 8 months. Most of them don't make it past 3. Why? Because I work too much. Because I don't know how to let people in. Because every woman I've dated has eventually realized they're competing with buildings and contracts and the ghost of my dead mother's disappointment." He set his cup down. "So if we're comparing disaster credentials, I think I win. This is the saddest competition I've ever been in." Tony laughed. "We're setting a really low bar for success here, aren't we?" "The lowest," Beckstrom smiled. "Maybe that's good. Nowhere to go but up." "I like that logic." They fell into easy conversation the way they had at her apartment. No performance, no pretense, just two people talking like they'd known each other longer than Faust's days. Tony asked about her childhood. Beckstrom told him about growing up in Colombia, about her father who'd worked construction and taught her how to fix anything with duct tape and optimism, about her mother who'd been a teacher before Parkinson's stole her steadiness. "What was your biggest fear as a kid?" Tony asked. "Drowning," Beckstrom said immediately. "I almost drowned in a pool when I was 7. My cousin pushed me in as a joke and I didn't know how to swim yet. My dad jumped in fully clothed and pulled me out." She stared into her coffee. "I can still feel what it was like. That moment of realizing nobody was coming, that I was alone and sinking, and nobody was going to save me." "But your dad did save you." "That time." Beckstrom looked up. "But he's not here anymore. So now when I feel like I'm drowning, financially, emotionally, whatever, there's nobody to jump in. That's terrifying." "Yeah." She paused. "What about you? Biggest childhood fear?" "Disappointing my father." Tony said it without hesitation. He was this force of nature, built everything from nothing, came from poverty, made millions, never let anyone forget how hard he'd worked. He traced the rim of his cup. "I was 8 years old, and already terrified I wouldn't measure up. That I'd be the one who ruined everything he'd built." "Did you? Ruin it?" "No, I made it bigger, built more, earned more." Tony's smile was bitter. "Turns out that didn't make him proud. It just made him competitive. We spent my 20s and 30s basically in a cold war of achievement." When did it end? When he died. Heart attack at 56, alone in his office at 2 a.m., because he was working on some deal that couldn't wait. Tony looked at her. Want to know the worst part? My first thought when I got the call wasn't grief. It was relief. Because I'd finally won. I'd outlasted him. Tony, I know it's horrible. Believe me, the guilt's been eating me alive for 5 years. He ran a hand through his hair. That's why I work so much. Why I keep building. Because if I stop, I have to face the fact that I wasted my entire relationship with my father trying to beat him at a game nobody should have been playing. Beckstrom reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers immediately. You're not your father, she said firmly. How do you know? Because you're sitting here, being honest, admitting you're scared and guilty and human. Your father wouldn't have done that. He would have pretended everything was fine and worked himself to death rather than admit vulnerability. She squeezed his hand. You're different. You're trying to be different. So are you. What do you mean? You're terrified of drowning alone, but you're still here. Still trying. Still showing up even though you're scared. Tony's voice went soft. That's not weakness, Beckstrom. That's courage. I don't feel courageous. Nobody does. That's what makes it courage. They sat in silence, hands linked across the table, and Beckstrom felt something shift inside her. Not just attraction, though that was there too. The awareness of his thumb rubbing small circles on her palm. The way his eyes stayed focused on her like nothing else in the world mattered. This was something deeper. Recognition. Safety. The sense that she could tell him anything and he wouldn't run. Can I tell you something? Beckstrom asked. Always. I haven't felt wanted in 4 years. The words came out quieter than she intended. Not really wanted. My ex-husband tolerated me toward the end. My coworkers need me but don't particularly want me around. My mother loves me but also worries about me too, which isn't the same thing. She looked at their joined hands. But when you look at me, I feel seen, like I matter, like I'm not just taking up space or failing to meet expectations. Tony's grip tightened. You do matter. So much more than you realize. How do you know? We barely know each other. Because being around you is the first time in over a year that I've felt grounded. Like I'm not just floating through life waiting for the next obligation. He leaned forward. You asked me why my relationships never lasted? It's because I never wanted to be present. I was always planning the exit, looking for the flaw, keeping one foot out the door. He paused. With you, I want to stay. I want to know everything. I want to just be here. Beckstrom's breath caught. Tony, I know it's fast. I know we should probably be more cautious. But I'm tired of being cautious. I'm tired of protecting myself from feeling things. His eyes searched hers. I like you, more than like. And I want to see where this goes if you'll let me. I'm scared. Me too. I'm broke and drowning in debt and have absolutely nothing to offer you except dysfunction and medical bills. You're offering yourself. That's everything. Tony smiled. Besides, I'm rich and emotionally unavailable and have absolutely nothing to offer you except workaholism and daddy issues. So we're even. Beckstrom laughed despite herself. We're ridiculous. Completely. He stood, still holding her hand, and pulled her to her feet. Want to walk? Keep being ridiculous together? Yes. They walked through downtown Charleston, hands linked, talking about nothing and everything. Tony told her about the first building he'd ever designed, a small community center that had been demolished 5 years later to make room for condos. Beckstrom told him about the worst hotel guest she'd ever dealt with, a woman who'd demanded the staff remove all the mirrors because she claimed her reflection was possessed. They laughed. They shared secrets. They stopped in front of a bookstore, and Tony bought her a novel she'd mentioned wanting to read but couldn't afford. "You don't have to," Beckstrom started. "I know. I want to." He handed her the bag. "Let me do things for you. Small things. Not because you need me to, but because I want to." "Okay." As the sun began to set and the November air grew colder, Tony walked her back to her car. "Thank you," Beckstrom said. "For today. For all of this. Thank you for showing up. For being honest. For letting me be honest. Can we do this again? I was hoping you'd ask." Tony smiled. "Tomorrow? Day after? Every day until you get tired of me?" "I don't think I'll get tired of you." "Good. Because I don't think I'll get tired of you either." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, and kissed her forehead. Gentle, reverent, the kind of kiss that promised patience. "Text me when you get home?" he asked. "I will." Beckstrom drove home in a daze, heart full, scared and hopeful and alive. For the first time in 4 years, she felt wanted, and it felt like everything. They'd been seeing each other for 2 weeks when Beckstrom's phone rang at 2:00 a.m. She was at Tony's house, his actual house, the glass architectural masterpiece overlooking the Atlantic that he'd finally worked up the courage to show her. They'd spent the evening on his couch, talking and watching a movie neither of them paid attention to, and Beckstrom had dozed off against his shoulder sometime around midnight. The ringtone jolted her awake. "It's my mom," she mumbled, fumbling for her phone on the coffee table. Her heart was already racing. Nobody called at 2:00 a.m. with good news. Tony sat up immediately, alert. "Answer it." "Ma?" Beckstrom's voice came out thick with sleep and fear. "Baby, don't panic." Her mother's voice was shaking. "Wrong." "I'm okay, but I fell. In the bathroom. I couldn't get up for almost an hour." Beckstrom was on her feet before she realized she was moving. "Are you hurt? Did you call 911? No. Patricia heard me calling and came over with her key, helped me up. I'm fine now, just shaken. Ma, you need to go to the hospital. Get checked out. What if you hit your head? What if—" "I can't afford the ER, Thelma." Her mother said it quietly, like an apology. "You know I can't. Not right now. Not with everything else." Beckstrom felt something crack open in her chest. The same drowning feeling from childhood, sinking, nobody coming, water closing over her head. "I'm coming up," she said. "First thing in the morning. We're going to the doctor whether you like it or not. Baby, no arguing. I'll be there by 9. She hung up before her mother could protest further and stood there, phone still pressed to her ear, trying to remember how to breathe. Tony was beside her in an instant. "What happened?" "She fell. She's—" Beckstrom's voice broke. "She can't afford to go to the ER. Her insurance doesn't kick in until she hits her deductible and she's nowhere close. So she's just sitting there, hurt, alone, because healthcare in this country is—" She couldn't finish. The words dissolved into something that might have been a sob, or might have been rage, or might have been both. Tony pulled her into his arms without asking. She let him, too exhausted to maintain the walls she usually kept up. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered against his chest. "I send her everything I can, every spare dollar. I work double shifts. I skip meals. And it's never enough. It's never going to be enough." "How much does she owe?" Tony asked quietly. Beckstrom pulled back. "What?" "Total medical debt. Hospital bills, specialists, medications. How much?" "I don't—" She stopped. She did know. The number lived in her head like a second heartbeat, constant and crushing. Around 47,000. Give or take. She watched Tony's face, waiting for the shock. the judgment, the inevitable calculation that she wasn't worth this kind of baggage. Instead, he just nodded. Okay. Okay? Let me help. The words hung in the air between them like something breakable. Beckstrom stepped back. No. Beckstrom, no. She said it louder this time, firmer. Absolutely not. Why not? I have the money. It wouldn't even... I said no. Her voice went sharp. Cold. The tone she used with hotel guests who got too handsy, with ex-husbands who showed up drunk wanting reconciliation. I'm not your charity case, Tony. That's not what I'm offering. Then what are you offering? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like the rich guy swooping in to save the poor damsel in distress. She crossed her arms, defensive. I've been there. I've been the woman who needed saving. My ex used to throw money at problems and act like it solved everything. Like I should be grateful he was willing to bankroll my disasters. I'm not your ex. No, but you're still a man with money trying to fix something I didn't ask you to fix. The words came out harsher than she meant them, but she couldn't stop. 4 years of exhaustion and pride and trauma were bubbling up like poison. What happens next? I let you pay my mother's bills. Then what? You hold it over my head? Remind me I owe you? Use it as leverage every time we fight? Tony flinched like she'd slapped him. You think I would do that? I don't know what you'd do. We've known each other for 2 weeks. Beckstrom felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. I can't. I won't be someone's project. Someone's tax write-off. Someone's feel-good story about how they rescued the struggling woman and made themselves feel noble. That's not... Tony stopped, took a breath, started again, slower this time. That's not what this is. Then what is it? It's me caring about you, about your mother, about the fact that you're drowning and I can help. He took a step toward her. She took a step back. Beckstrom, I'm not trying to save you or control you or make you owe me anything. I'm trying to be what I wish someone had been for me. What does that mean? It means I broke alone. His voice went raw. After my mother died, I fell apart. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't function. Spent 3 months basically in a fugue state, showing up to work on autopilot while dying inside. He looked at her with eyes that hurt to meet so. And nobody helped. Not because they couldn't. Because I had money, they assumed I was fine. Because I looked put together, they figured I had it handled. I was drowning, and everyone around me just watched. Beckstrom felt something shift in her chest, but she held her ground. That's different. How? Because you chose to be alone. You pushed people away. I'm trying to stay afloat and I'm offering you a hand. Tony closed the distance between them before she could retreat again. That's all. Not control. Not ownership. Just help. The kind I desperately needed and was too proud to ask for. He reached for her hand. She let him take it, barely. You're allowed to accept help, Beckstrom. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less than. It just makes you human. I can't. Her voice cracked. Tony, I can't take your money. It changes everything. How? Because then I'm not your equal. I'm your... My what? My girlfriend who I care about, whose mother needs medical care she can't afford? Tony's grip tightened on her hand. That doesn't make you less than me. It makes you someone with a problem I can help solve. If you had a car and I needed a ride, you'd help me, right? That's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing, just a different currency. He pulled her closer. She resisted, but only barely. I have money I'll never spend. More money than any one person should have. And you have a mother who needs help. Let me do something meaningful with it. please. It's not charity? It's not charity. Tony said it firmly. It's care. It's me investing in someone who matters to me. Someone whose pain I can actually alleviate instead of just watching helplessly. What if we don't work out? The question came out small, scared. What if this thing between us falls apart, and then I'm just the woman who took your money and ran? Then you're still a woman whose mother got medical care she needed. He cupped her face with his free hand. I'm not keeping score, Beckstrom. I'm not building a ledger of debts. I just want to help. Because watching you struggle when I have the means to ease it feels wrong. It feels like standing on shore while someone drowns. The metaphor hit her like a punch. Her childhood fear, the pool, the water closing over her head while nobody came. I'm not asking you to let me save you, Tony continued quietly. I'm asking you to let me help you save yourself, and there's a difference. Beckstrom felt the tears finally break free. She'd been holding them back for 2 years. Since the first bill arrived after her mother's diagnosis, since the first time she'd had to choose between groceries and medication, since the 100th time she'd lied and said she was fine when she was breaking. I'm so tired, she whispered. I know. I don't know how to accept this. I don't know how to let someone help without feeling like I'm failing. You're not failing. You're human. Tony wiped her tears with his thumb. And humans aren't meant to carry everything alone. What if I can't pay you back? I don't want you to pay me back. I want your mother to get help. I want you to stop working yourself to death, trying to fix something that shouldn't be your burden alone. He paused. If you want to make this alone, if that makes it easier, fine. But I'd rather you just accept it as a gift. From someone who cares, who wants to help, who has the means and the desire and absolutely no agenda except making sure you and your mother are okay. Beckstrom searched his face for the catch, the angle, the hidden price tag that would come due later. She found nothing but honesty, concern, fear that she'd say no and keep drowning out of pride. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. You promise it doesn't change anything between us? I promise. If anything, it solidifies that I'm all in. That this isn't casual for me. That when I said I wanted to see where this goes, I meant it. Tony pulled her fully into his arms. This time she didn't resist. Let me help, Beckstrom, please. Let me be useful for something other than building towers nobody needs. She stood there in his embrace, tears soaking into his shirt, and felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Supported. Not saved. Not fixed. Just not alone. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay. She pulled back to look at him. But we do this my way. We figure out exactly what my mother needs, what her bills are, and we handle it properly. Not just you throwing money at problems. Whatever you need. And this doesn't mean I'm yours. It doesn't mean I owe you anything except honesty and respect. I know. And if you ever use this against me, or make me feel small for accepting it, I'm gone. Understood. Tony smiled softly. Anything else? Thank you. Beckstrom said it quietly, the words foreign in her mouth. I don't say that enough, or maybe I say it too much to people who don't mean it. But I mean it now. Thank you. For caring. For offering. For not making me feel broken for needing help. You're not broken, Tony said. You're just carrying too much. Let me carry some of it with you. She kissed him then, not passionate but grateful, tender, the kind of kiss that promised trust. And for the first time in 2 years, Beckstrom felt like maybe drowning wasn't inevitable. Maybe someone had finally jumped in. 1 week after the conversation about her mother's medical bills, Tony asked Beckstrom to come to his house. Not for coffee, not for a quick visit. For the weekend. "I want you to see where I live," he'd said over the phone. "Really see it. Not just the living room where we watch movies. All of it." Beckstrom had agreed before her anxiety could talk her out of it. But now, sitting in her car outside the address Tony had texted her, she was reconsidering every decision that had led to this moment. The house wasn't visible from the road. Just a sleek metal gate with a security panel and a driveway that disappeared into coastal vegetation. Beckstrom punched in the code Tony had given her, and the gate slid open silently. The driveway curved for what felt like half a mile before the house came into view, and when it did, Beckstrom's breath stopped. It wasn't a house. It was a work of art. Glass and steel and wood rose from the clifftop like something out of an architectural magazine. All clean lines and impossible angles, perched at the edge of the Atlantic, as if daring the ocean to come closer. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the late afternoon sun, making the entire structure appear to glow. The design was modern but not cold, dramatic but not ostentatious. It was the kind of house Beckstrom had only seen in movies about people whose lives she couldn't begin to understand. She parked her beat-up Toyota next to Tony's sleek black sedan and sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe. This was a mistake. She didn't belong here. She belonged in her third-floor apartment with thin walls and a view of a parking lot. She belonged in a world where people worried about rent and medical bills and whether they could afford name-brand cereal. Not here. Never here. Her phone buzzed. "Tony. I see you. You okay?" She looked up. Tony stood on what appeared to be a second-floor balcony, phone in hand, watching her with an expression she couldn't read from this distance. "Beckstrom, your house is terrifying." "Tony. I know. Come inside anyway." Beckstrom got out of the car on shaking legs and walked to the front door, a massive wood and glass creation that probably cost more than her annual salary. Before she could knock, the door opened. Tony stood there in jeans and a gray t-shirt, barefoot, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. And somehow that made it worse, because he belonged here, in this space, in this life, and she absolutely did not. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Come in." He stepped back, giving her space. Beckstrom crossed the threshold and felt like she was entering a different dimension. The interior was even more stunning than the exterior. The entire back wall was glass, massive panels that showcased an unobstructed view of the Atlantic stretching to the horizon. Natural light poured in, illuminating an open-concept living space with polished concrete floors, minimalist furniture, and artwork that looked expensive even to her untrained eye. Everything was clean, intentional, perfect. Nothing like her cluttered apartment with its thrift store couch and mismatched dishes. "This is..." Beckstrom trailed off, unsure what word could possibly capture what she was feeling. "This is too much." Tony closed the door behind her. "Too much how?" "Too much everything." She turned to face him, feeling tears prick her eyes and hating herself for it. "Tony, I don't belong here." "Why not?" "Because look at this place." She gestured wildly at the space around them. "This is a museum. This is where people who matter live. Important people. Successful people. Not hotel workers who can barely afford to fix their cars." "Beckstrom, I'm serious." Her voice cracked. "I don't fit here. I don't fit in your world. And eventually you're going to realize that. And then what? I'll have let myself fall for you, and you'll wake up one day and see me the way I see myself right now. Out of place, inadequate, wrong. Tony crossed to her in 3 strides and took her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "Stop," he said firmly. "Please stop. It's true. It's not true. It's fear talking. The same fear that tells me I'm not worthy of being loved because I work too much. The same fear that says I'm just my father's son, destined to die alone in an empty house I built to fill a void nothing can fill." His thumbs stroked her cheeks. "We're both terrified, Beckstrom, but we're terrified of the wrong things. What should I be terrified of? Missing this, missing us, missing the chance to be with someone who actually sees you." He stepped back and spread his arms. "This house? It's just glass and steel and money. It doesn't mean anything. It's empty. It's been empty since the day I moved in because I built it thinking square footage and ocean views would make me happy. They didn't. You know what does? What? You. Sitting on my couch eating takeout and telling me I'm full of shit when I try to work on weekends. You. Texting me at 2 a.m. because you can't sleep, and neither can I. You. Making me laugh. Making me feel. Making me want to be present instead of just going through motions." He moved closer again. "This house is just a place. You make it a home." Beckstrom felt something break open in her chest. "I'm scared." "I know. So am I." Tony took her hand. "But I didn't bring you here to intimidate you or make you feel small. I brought you here because this is part of my life and I want you in all of it. Not just the easy parts. The hard parts, too. The lonely parts. The parts where I admit I built all this and still feel like I have nothing. You have everything. I have things. That's different." He squeezed her hand. "Come on, let me show you the rest. Maybe it'll be less intimidating if you see how empty it actually is." He led her through the house and Beckstrom began to understand what he meant. Yes, the architecture was stunning. Yes, every detail was expensive and carefully chosen. But it was also sterile, impersonal, like a showroom nobody actually lived in. The kitchen had state-of-the-art appliances that looked unused. The dining room had a table for 12 that had clearly never hosted a meal. The home office had expensive furniture, but no personal touches, no photos, no mementos, nothing that suggested a human being worked there. "You don't really live here, do you?" Beckstrom asked as they climbed stairs to the 2nd floor. "Not really, no. I sleep here, work here, exist here." Tony paused on the landing. "But I don't live here. I haven't lived anywhere in years." The 2nd floor was more of the same. Beautiful, empty, lonely. Guest rooms that had never had guests. A media room with a massive screen nobody watched. A gym with equipment that looked barely used. And then Tony led her to the balcony. The view stole whatever breath Beckstrom had left. The Atlantic stretched endlessly before them, waves crashing against the rocks below, the setting sun painting the water gold and orange and pink. The balcony itself was spacious, with comfortable outdoor furniture and glass railings that didn't interrupt the view. It was the most beautiful thing Beckstrom had ever seen. And also the loneliest. "I stand out here sometimes," Tony said quietly, leaning against the railing. "Late at night when I can't sleep. And I think about how my father would have loved this house. How he would have seen it as proof he raised a son who succeeded. Who built something impressive." He laughed without humor. "And then I think about how he pined alone in an office. And I'm going to die alone on this balcony, and the view won't matter because there's nobody to share it with." Beckstrom stepped beside him. "You're not alone." "I was. Until you." Tony turned to face her. "Do you know what you've given me in the last 3 weeks? Medical bills to pay? Hope." He said it simply. "You've given me hope that maybe I don't have to be my father. That maybe I can build something that matters more than square footage and profit margins. That maybe someone can want me for who I am instead of what I have. Tony, you make me feel human, Beckstrom. When I'm with you, I'm not Tony Borunda, the developer. I'm not the guy who signs checks and builds towers. I'm just Tony, some guy who burns turkey and doesn't know how to cook and works too much because he's scared to feel things. He reached for her hand. You make me feel wanted, not needed, not useful, wanted. Like my presence matters, like I matter. Beckstrom felt tears streaming down her face. You do matter. So do you. That's what I'm trying to tell you. He pulled her closer. This house doesn't make me better than you. It doesn't mean I have my life together while you're struggling. It just means I have money. That's all. Money and an empty house and a life I've been sleepwalking through for 41 years. I don't know how to be in your world. You're not in my world. We're building a new one. Together. Tony cupped her face. One where it doesn't matter that I have money and you don't. Where what matters is honesty and vulnerability and showing up for each other even when we're terrified. What if I can't give you what you need? You already do. Every time you tell me the truth. Every time you call me out when I'm working too much. Every time you let me see you scared and struggling instead of pretending you're fine. He paused. What if I can't give you what you need? You already do, Beckstrom whispered. You listen. You care. You make me feel like I'm not drowning alone. They stood on the balcony as the sun set over the Atlantic, holding each other, and Beckstrom felt something shift, not just in her chest, but in the space between them. This wasn't about money or houses or fitting into worlds that felt foreign. This was about two people recognizing each other, choosing each other, building something new from their combined brokenness. Can I tell you my deepest fear? Beckstrom asked. Please. I'm afraid I'll wake up one day and you'll realize I'm not special. That I'm just another broke woman with problems you can solve. And once the novelty wears off, you'll move on to someone who fits better in places like this. Tony was quiet for a moment. Then, can I tell you mine? Yes. I'm afraid I'll wake up one day and you'll realize I'm not actually a good person. That I'm just a workaholic with money who uses generosity to feel less empty inside. That you'll see through me and leave, and I'll end up exactly like my father, alone, successful, and miserable. You're not your father. You're not just another broke woman with problems. Tony pulled back to look at her. You're the person who makes me want to be present, to be better, to stop building towers that mean nothing and start building a life that does. I'm scared this is too good to be true. Me too. He smiled. Let's be scared together. In this too big, too empty house that maybe won't feel so empty if you're in it. Beckstrom kissed him then, soft and grateful and terrified and hopeful all at once. And standing on that balcony, watching the sun set over the Atlantic, she finally understood. Tony wasn't giving her access to his money, or his house, or his world. He was giving her access to himself, the real him, the scared, lonely, grieving him who'd been hiding behind buildings and bank accounts and the persona of success. And that was worth more than any glass mansion could ever be. They stayed on the balcony as the last light faded from the sky and the Atlantic turned from gold to silver to black. Tony had ordered food at some point, Chinese takeout that arrived in containers nicer than anything Beckstrom owned, and they'd eaten sitting on the outdoor furniture, watching stars appear one by one above the water. Now the food was forgotten, containers growing cold on the side table, and they were just sitting, close but not touching, both aware of something building between them that neither knew how to name. Can I ask you something? Tony said finally, breaking the comfortable silence. Always. What are we doing? He turned to face her. I know what I want this to be, but I don't know what you want. and I'm terrified of assuming wrong. Beckstrom's heart began to race. What do you want it to be? More. He said it simply, but his voice shook slightly. Not just dates and texts and spending time together. Not just whatever this casual thing is that we've been doing where we pretend we're not falling for each other. Tony, I want you, Beckstrom. Not temporarily, not casually, not as some rebound or distraction or charity case I'm fixing. He shifted closer, eyes intense in the moonlight. I want to build something real with you, something intentional, something that scares me because it matters. Beckstrom felt her chest tighten. That's too much? Tony's face fell slightly. Too fast? Too terrifying, she finished for him. That's absolutely terrifying. I know. I'm sorry. No. She grabbed his hand before he could pull away. I mean terrifying because I want it too. And wanting things has never worked out well for me. Tony's grip tightened. Talk to me. I'm scared, Tony. The words tumbled out in a rush. I'm scared of falling for you and having you realize I'm not worth the effort. I'm scared of needing you and then losing you, like I've lost everyone else who mattered. I'm scared of being happy because every time I've been happy before, something came along and destroyed it. What destroyed it before? My father's death, my marriage, my mother's illness. She looked at their joined hands. Every time I thought I had something good, something stable, it got ripped away. And I don't know if I can survive that again. So you want to keep this casual? Keep us at arm's length? No. Beckstrom's voice broke. That's the problem. I don't want casual. I want exactly what you want. I want more. I want real. I want you. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. But I'm so scared of wanting you. Because what if I let myself fall and you're not there to catch me? Tony cupped her face with both hands, thumbs wiping away tears as fast as they fell. I'm scared too, he admitted. I'm terrified that I'm going to mess this up the way I mess up everything else. That I'll work too much or say the wrong thing or fail to show up when you need me. That you'll wake up one day and realize you deserve someone better. Someone who knows how to be a partner instead of a workaholic with money. You're not just a workaholic with money. You're not just a scared woman who's been hurt before. He leaned his forehead against hers. We're both disasters, remember? But maybe we're disasters who found each other at exactly the right time. What if we break each other? What if we heal each other instead? Tony pulled back just enough to look in her eyes. I can't promise I won't hurt you. I can't promise this will be easy or perfect or always make sense. But I can promise I'll show up. I'll be honest. I'll choose you even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Tony, I want this, Beckstrom. I want you, not the version of you that pretends to be fine, not the version that has it all together. The real you, the scared, tired, struggling you who opened her door on Thanksgiving because a stranger looked lonely. His voice went soft. You saved me that night. Let me be here for you now. Let me be someone you can fall for without being afraid I'll drop you. Beckstrom felt something break open inside her chest. Not breaking apart, but breaking free. Like something that had been locked away for 4 years was finally allowed to breathe. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. What if I'm not enough for you? You're already more than enough. You're everything. Tony's hands were still cradling her face like she was something precious. You make me want to be present, to be better, to stop hiding behind work and money and buildings that don't mean anything. You make me feel human, wanted, like I matter not for what I have but for who I am. You do matter. So do you. That's what I'm trying to tell you. He paused, searching her face. So I'm asking, what do you want? Really want? Beckstrom took a shaky breath. I want to stop being scared. Then let's be scared together. Let's jump and trust we'll catch each other. What if we fall? Then we fall together. Tony smiled softly. But I don't think we will. I think we're going to fly. And in that moment, with the ocean crashing below them and stars scattered above them, and Tony looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered, Beckstrom made a choice. She stopped being afraid. She closed the distance between them and kissed him. Not tentatively, not testing, but fully, completely. With 4 years of loneliness and longing and locked away hope pouring into the connection between them. Tony made a sound, surprise or relief or joy, and kissed her back with the same intensity. His hands slid from her face to her hair, pulling her closer. Her hands fisted in his shirt, holding on like he might disappear if she let go. The kiss was everything Beckstrom hadn't let herself want. Urgent and tender and transformative, like crossing a threshold she couldn't uncross, like finally coming home after years of being lost. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tony rested his forehead against hers. Beckstrom, I want this, she said before he could finish. I want you. I want more. I want everything you're offering, and I'm terrified, but I'm doing it anyway because not having you would be worse than risking this. Tony's laugh was shaky. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him again, softer this time. I'm all in, Tony. I don't know what that looks like or what it means, but I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. I'm choosing to believe this might actually work. It will work. He pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her. We'll make it work. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other, kissing between whispered confessions and promises neither of them was sure they could keep, but both were determined to try. Can I tell you something? Beckstrom asked eventually, head resting on Tony's shoulder. Anything. I haven't felt wanted in 4 years. Not really wanted. Not the way you make me feel. She pulled back to look at him. My ex-husband tolerated me toward the end. Acted like I was an obligation he'd signed up for and regretted. And I started believing that's all I was worth. Tolerance. Obligation. Pity. You're worth so much more than that. I'm starting to believe it. Because of you. She touched his face. You look at me like I'm someone you chose. Someone you want to keep choosing. And that's everything. Tony turned his head to kiss her palm. You are someone I chose, and I will keep choosing you. Every single day. Even when I'm difficult, especially then. Even when I'm broke and stressed and drowning in problems you could solve with money, but I won't let you 'cause I'm stubborn. Especially then, he smiled. Your stubbornness is one of my favorite things about you. You don't need me. You want me. There's a difference. I do want you. Beckstrom kissed him again. So much it scares me. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared. The kind that means it matters. They talked until well past midnight, defining what more meant for them. Not rushing into labels or expectations, but agreeing to be intentional, to be honest, to show up for each other even when it was hard. Stay tonight, Tony said finally. Not like that. I mean, unless you want, but I just mean stay. Sleep in one of the guest rooms or in my room or wherever you're comfortable, but stay. Let me make you breakfast in the morning. Let me wake up knowing you're here. Beckstrom hesitated only a moment before nodding. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. I'll stay. Tony's smile was radiant. They moved inside eventually, the coastal air growing too cold even for the heaters Tony had turned on. He showed her to the master bedroom, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean and a bed that could sleep four. "This is your room?" Beckstrom asked, intimidated all over again. "It could be our room," Tony said carefully. "If you wanted, or you can take the guest room. No pressure." Beckstrom looked at the bed, then at Tony, then made another choice. "Our room," she said. "If that's okay." "That's more than okay." They got ready for bed with a domesticity that felt both foreign and natural. Tony lent her a t-shirt that hung to her knees. She washed her face with fancy skincare products she didn't understand. They brushed their teeth side by side at his bathroom's double sinks. And when they climbed into bed together, Tony pulled her close but didn't push for more. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "For what?" "For kissing me first. For choosing this. For being brave enough to let yourself want something good." He held her tighter. "For saving me." "You saved me too," Beckstrom said. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in 4 years, Beckstrom didn't dream about drowning. She dreamed about flying. The call from Beckstrom's mother came 3 days after Tony had quietly arranged to pay off her medical bills. Beckstrom was at work, dealing with a particularly demanding guest who insisted the ocean view from his room wasn't oceany enough, when her phone buzzed with her mother's ringtone. She excused herself and stepped into the back office. "Ma, everything okay?" "Thelma Beckstrom, what did you do?" Her mother's voice wasn't angry exactly. It was something worse, wounded, confused, like she'd been betrayed by someone she trusted. Beckstrom's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean the hospital called, said my bills were paid. All of them, every single one." Her mother's voice shook. "And when I asked who paid them, they said it was handled by a private benefactor but wouldn't give me a name. Except I know exactly who it was, don't I?" "Ma, did you let that man pay my bills, Thelma?" The question hit like a slap. Not, did Tony help, or did you ask for assistance? Did you let him? Like Beckstrom had failed some fundamental test of independence. "It's not like that," Beckstrom said, hating how defensive she sounded. "Then what is it like?" "Because from where I'm sitting, my daughter is letting some wealthy man she's known for a month pay off $47,000 of debt. And that doesn't sit right with me." He wanted to help. I'm sure he did. Men like that always want to help. Her mother's tone went sharp. "Right up until the moment they decide to collect on that help. Right up until they hold it over your head every time you disagree with them. Tony's not like that. You don't know what he's like. You barely know him." Her mother took a shaky breath. "Baby, I love you, and I'm grateful someone cares about you enough to want to help. But this makes us beholden to him. This changes the power dynamic between you two in ways you might not see yet, but will definitely feel later." Beckstrom felt tears burning behind her eyes. "So you'd rather keep drowning in debt? Rather risk not getting the care you need because of some principle about not accepting help?" "I'd rather my daughter maintain her dignity and independence instead of becoming some rich man's project." The words landed like a punch to the gut. "Is that what you think I am? A project? I think you're vulnerable. I think you've been alone and struggling for 4 years, and this man showed up at exactly the right moment to feel like a savior. And I'm worried that you're confusing rescue with love." "You don't know him," Beckstrom said, voice breaking. "You don't know us. Then bring him here. Let me meet him. Let me see if this is real, or if you're just so desperate for someone to care that you're willing to accept whatever strings come attached to his money." Beckstrom hung up before she said something she'd regret. She made it through the rest of her shift on autopilot, smiling at guests and solving problems, while her mother's words played on repeat in her head. Some rich man's project. Confusing rescue with love. desperate. By the time she got to her car, Beckstrom was shaking with something that felt like rage and shame and fear all tangled together. She drove to Tony's house without calling first. Tony answered the door in workout clothes, hair damp from a shower, and his smile faded the moment he saw her face. "What happened?" he asked immediately. "My mother knows." Beckstrom pushed past him into the house. "About the bills, about you paying them. And her voice cracked. "She thinks I'm your charity case, your project, some desperate woman you're rescuing to feel good about yourself." Tony closed the door carefully. "You know that's not true." "Do I?" Beckstrom spun to face him. "Because from the outside, that's exactly what this looks like. Rich man swoops in, pays off poor woman's debts, and she's so grateful she lets him into her life and her bed without questioning his motives. My motive is caring about you. Or maybe your motive is feeling needed, feeling important. Feeling like you're fixing something because that's easier than dealing with your own broken parts." The words came out harsh, mean, and Beckstrom watched them land on Tony's face like blows. "Maybe I'm just another building project, something you can throw money at and renovate until it meets your standards." Tony's jaw tightened. "Is that really what you think?" "I don't know what to think." Beckstrom's voice rose. "My mother just told me I'm losing my dignity by accepting your help. That I'm beholden to you now. That this changes everything between us and I was too desperate to see it." "You're not desperate." "Aren't I? I'm broke, Tony. I'm drowning in debt. Or I was until you paid it off without even telling me you were doing it." She felt tears streaming down her face. "You didn't ask me. You just did it. Like I don't get a say in how my own mother's bills get handled. You told me I could help. I told you we'd figure it out together. That's different from you just handling it behind my back." Beckstrom wrapped her arms around herself. "Don't you see? This is exactly what I was afraid of. You have so much power in this relationship, just by virtue of having money. And every time you use that power, even with good intentions, it reminds me that we're not equals. That I'm the one who needs rescuing, and you're the one doing the rescuing." Tony stood very still, and Beckstrom watched him process her words. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Careful. "What do you want me to do?" "I don't know." "Do you want me to take it back? Ask for the money back?" "No, yes. I don't know." Beckstrom sank onto his couch, exhausted. "I'm grateful, Tony. I'm so grateful I could cry. But I'm also terrified of what it means, of what I owe you now." "You don't owe me anything. Everyone says that, right up until they collect." She looked up at him, eyes burning. "My ex-husband used to do this. Pay for things, fix things, handle things. And then later, during fights, he'd throw it in my face, remind me how much he'd done for me. How much I should be grateful for. How I should shut up and accept whatever he decided because he was the one paying the bills." Tony's expression crumpled. "I would never. You say that now. But what happens when we fight? What happens when I disagree with you about something that matters? Will you remind me then? Will you tell me I should be grateful? That I should listen because you're the one who saved my mother's life?" Her voice broke completely. "I can't go through that again. I can't be with someone who holds their generosity over my head like a weapon." Tony crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her hands. She tried to pull away, but he held firm, not forceful, just steady. "Look at me," he said softly. She did. "I don't want to control you. I don't want you beholden to me. I don't want power over you." His eyes were wet. "I just wanted to help someone I care about. Someone whose mother was suffering. And maybe I did it wrong. Maybe I should have talked to you first, made sure you were okay with how I handled it. But I promise you, I swear to you, it wasn't about power or control or making you feel small. Then what was it about? It was about not being helpless for once. Tony's voice cracked. My whole life I've watched people I love suffer and done nothing. My mother got sick, and I threw money at it instead of being present. My father worked himself to death, and I just competed with him instead of helping him see there was another way. I'm useless at the things that actually matter. He squeezed her hands. But this? Your mother's bills? That was something concrete I could fix. Something that would actually make a difference. And I wanted to do it. Not to control you. To help you. To be useful for something other than signing checks and building towers nobody needs. Beckstrom felt something shift in her chest. Tony, I'm not trying to rescue you. I'm trying to show up for you. There's a difference. He brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles. And if I did it wrong, if I overstepped or made you feel small or reminded you of your ex-husband, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Tell me how to fix it. I don't know if you can. Try me. Beckstrom took a shaky breath. I need to know this doesn't change us, that you don't see me differently now, that I'm not just some poor woman you're taking care of out of pity or guilt or whatever complex savior thing you have going on. You're not, Tony said it firmly. You're the woman I'm falling in love with, the woman who makes me want to be better, the woman who sees me, really sees me, not just what I have or what I've built. He paused. Helping your mother wasn't about you needing rescuing. It was about me needing to do something that mattered. That was for love, not obligation. You're falling in love with me? Yes. He said it simply, no hesitation. Completely, terrifyingly. In a way that makes me understand why people write songs and build monuments and do stupid things they can't take back. He searched her face. Are you falling in love with me? Beckstrom felt fresh tears spill over. Yes. That's what makes this so scary. Why? Because I'm afraid of being loved too well. The confession came out in a whisper. I'm afraid of someone caring for me so much that I lose myself in it. That I become someone who depends on being saved instead of someone who saves herself. My mother raised me to be independent, to stand on my own feet. And letting you help feels like failing her. Or maybe it feels like learning something your mother didn't know. Tony shifted to sit beside her on the couch. Maybe being independent doesn't mean refusing all help. Maybe it means accepting help from people who love you without losing yourself in the process. How do I do that? We figure it out together. We set boundaries. We communicate. We mess up and apologize and try again. He pulled her against his side. I don't want to lose you over this. I don't want my money or my stupid savior complex to ruin the best thing that's happened to me in years. I don't want to lose you either. Beckstrom rested her head on his shoulder. But I need you to understand. I need to feel like you're equal. Not your charity case, not your project, your partner. You are my partner. Then treat me like one. Talk to me before making big decisions that affect my life. Ask me what I need instead of assuming. Let me contribute in ways that aren't financial, because that's not the only currency that matters in a relationship. Okay. Tony kissed the top of her head. What do you need right now? I need you to meet my mother. Let her see you're real, that this is real, that you're not just some rich guy with an agenda. When? This weekend, if you're willing. I'm willing. He paused. Will she hate me? Probably a little. At first, she's protective. Beckstrom tilted her head to look at him. Can you handle that? I can handle anything if it means keeping you. They sat in silence for a long moment. both processing the fight and the reconciliation and the vulnerable truths they'd shared. "I'm sorry," Beckstrom said finally, "for saying you were treating me like a building project. That was unfair. I'm sorry for making decisions without you, for forgetting that help without communication is just control with good intentions. We're learning." "Yeah," Tony smiled softly. "We are." Beckstrom kissed him then, not passionate but grounding, the kind of kiss that said, "I'm here. I'm staying. We're figuring this out." And for the first time since her mother's call, she felt like maybe they actually could. The drive to Columbia took 3 hours. Beckstrom sat in the passenger seat of Tony's car, not his usual sedan, but something more modest he'd borrowed from Carmen, because he didn't want to show up at her mother's house looking like exactly what he was, a billionaire who might be taking advantage of her daughter. "You're nervous," Beckstrom observed, watching his hands grip the steering wheel a little too tightly. "Terrified," Tony admitted. "What if she hates me?" "She probably will. A little, at first." Beckstrom reached over and squeezed his knee. "But she'll come around. She's protective, not unreasonable. What if I say the wrong thing?" "You will, multiple times, and then you'll apologize and we'll all move forward." She smiled. "Welcome to family, Tony. It's messy and uncomfortable and nothing like building towers where you control all the variables. I'm starting to see that." They'd spent the past week establishing what Beckstrom had started calling the rules, boundaries they both needed to feel like partners instead of rescuer and rescued. Tony had to ask before making big financial decisions that affected her. Beckstrom had to actually tell him when she needed help instead of suffering in silence. They both had to communicate when they felt the power dynamic shifting instead of letting resentment build. It wasn't perfect. They'd already had 2 more arguments about money. One when Tony tried to pay her rent and she'd refused. Another when she'd insisted on contributing to groceries at his house even though he'd said it was ridiculous. But they were learning. And more importantly, they were both trying. "Thank you for doing this," Beckstrom said quietly. "For meeting her. For letting her see you're real. I want to do this. I want to know the people who matter to you." Tony glanced at her. "And I want her to know I'm serious about you. That this isn't casual or temporary or some rich guy playing at poverty tourism. Don't say poverty tourism to my mother. She'll throw you out." Noted. Eleanor Beckstrom lived in a small brick house in a quiet Columbia neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knew each other and looked out for each other's lawns. Her friend Patricia answered the door, tall, suspicious, and clearly playing protective guard dog. "You must be Tony," Patricia said, looking him up and down like she was assessing livestock. "Yes, ma'am." Tony offered his hand. "Tony Borunda." Patricia ignored the hand. "Thelma, your billionaire's here." "He's not my billionaire," Beckstrom called from inside the house. "He's just Tony." "Mm-hmm." Patricia stepped aside to let them in, still eyeing Tony like he might steal the silverware. Eleanor Beckstrom sat in a recliner in the living room, a walker positioned nearby. And Beckstrom felt her heart clench at how much older her mother looked than the last time she'd visited. The tremors were worse, the fatigue more visible, but her eyes were still sharp, still assessing, still protective. "Ma," Beckstrom said, crossing to kiss her mother's cheek. "This is Tony." Tony stepped forward, not too close, not too familiar. "Mrs. Beckstrom, it's an honor to meet you." "Is it?" Her mother's voice was cool. "Even knowing I'm the reason you had to write a $47,000 check to impress my daughter?" "Ma," Beckstrom started. "It's okay," Tony said quietly. He pulled a chair over and sat so he was at eye level with Eleanor instead of towering over her. "Can I be honest with you? I'd prefer it. I didn't pay your medical bills to impress your daughter. I paid them because watching someone I care about suffer when I have the means to help felt wrong. Immoral, even. He paused. I know that sounds self-serving. I know you're worried I'm using money to control your daughter or make her feel beholden to me. And if I were in your position, I'd worry about that too. Eleanor studied him. But I'm not trying to control her. I'm trying to show up for her. The way I wish someone had shown up for me when I was drowning after my mother died. Tony's voice went rough. Your daughter saved my life, Mrs. Beckstrom. On Thanksgiving, when I knocked on her door looking for an escape from my own loneliness, she let me in. Shared burnt turkey with me. Reminded me what it felt like to be human instead of just functional. So you're paying me back by paying my bills? I'm trying to be worthy of her, and that means supporting the people she loves. Not because I think she needs rescuing, but because that's what partners do. They show up. They help carry things. They use whatever resources they have to make life easier for the people who matter. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Then, what are your intentions with my daughter? Tony didn't hesitate. To love her. To partner with her. To build a life together that honors both of us as equals, regardless of our financial situations. He glanced at Beckstrom, then back at her mother. I know we've only known each other a short time. I know it's fast. But I also know I've never felt this way about anyone. She makes me want to be better. Present. Real. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving to her and to you that I'm worthy of that. Patricia made a small noise from the kitchen doorway. When Beckstrom looked over, her mother's friend was wiping her eyes. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. You hurt her, and Patricia will help me hide your body. Understood? Yes, ma'am. And you don't get to use that money as leverage. Ever. Not in fights, not when things get hard, not when you're frustrated. You paid those bills freely, or you didn't pay them at all. I paid them freely, and I'd do it again without expecting anything in return. Good. Eleanor looked at her daughter. Baby, come here. Beckstrom crossed to her mother's chair. Eleanor took her hand. You love him? Her mother asked quietly. Yes. And he treats you well? Makes you feel valued? Doesn't make you small? He makes me feel seen, Beckstrom said. For the first time in 4 years, I feel seen and wanted, and like I matter. Eleanor squeezed her hand, tremors making the gesture shaky but no less meaningful. Then I approve, tentatively, pending further review. I'll take it, Tony said, smiling. They stayed for lunch. Fried chicken Patricia had made, because apparently nobody trusted Beckstrom or Tony to cook anything that wouldn't poison them. They talked, laughed, told stories, and Beckstrom watched her mother slowly warm to Tony, seeing what Beckstrom saw. A good man trying his best, scared and vulnerable and real. When they left, Eleanor pulled Beckstrom aside. He's not your father, her mother said quietly. He's not going to give everything away and die exhausted. He's got resources, and he's offering to share them. That's different. You told me I was losing my dignity. I was scared, and protective, and worried you'd repeat my mistakes. Eleanor cupped her daughter's face. But I see how he looks at you, and I see how you look at him. That's not dependency. That's love. There's a difference. I'm still figuring out how to accept help without feeling like I'm failing. Then keep figuring it out. With him together. Her mother smiled. You deserve to be happy, baby. You deserve to be wanted. Don't let fear steal that from you. Thanksgiving came 1 year after Tony had knocked on Beckstrom's door. They spent it at his house. Their house now, technically, since Beckstrom had moved in 3 months earlier, after a long conversation about cohabitation and financial boundaries, and what partnership actually looked like when one person owned a glass mansion and the other contributed love and presence and emotional labor that couldn't be quantified. Her mother was there, Patricia too, Carmen and her family, a few of Tony's colleagues who'd become actual friends instead of just business contacts. The house that had been empty for 6 years was finally full. Beckstrom stood on the balcony, watching the sun set over the Atlantic, and felt Tony's arms slide around her waist from behind. "Happy?" he murmured against her hair. "So happy it scares me." "Good scared or bad scared?" "Good scared." She leaned back against him. "The kind that means it matters." They stood there watching the sky turn gold and orange and pink, and Beckstrom thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, alone in her apartment, reaching for a sad turkey breast, convinced she'd spend the holiday drowning in loneliness and medical bills and the exhaustion of pretending to be fine. She thought about the knock that had changed everything, the door she'd opened despite every instinct telling her to stay safe, the man who'd looked as broken as she felt. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For knocking on my door, for being lost in the hallway, for choosing me." Tony turned her in his arms so they were face to face. "Thank you for opening the door, for seeing me, for letting me fall in love with you, Sean. We're quite a pair. The best pair." He kissed her forehead. Two disasters who found each other and decided to be disasters together. Is that what we are? No, Tony smiled. We're two people who were drowning alone and learned how to swim together. There's a difference. From inside, they heard Patricia calling them for dinner. Beckstrom's mother laughing at something Carmen said. The sound of life filling spaces that had been empty too long. "Come on," Beckstrom said, taking Tony's hand. "Let's go be grateful." They walked inside together, and Beckstrom realized something. Thanksgiving used to mean loneliness, loss, everything she'd failed to hold on to. Now it meant something else entirely. It meant the day she stopped being invisible, the day someone knocked and saw her and chose to stay. The day she learned that accepting help wasn't weakness and that love didn't have to come with conditions. She thought she'd spend Thanksgiving alone, but she'd ended it wanted, seen, and chosen. And that made all the difference.